In this video, I'm going to go over how Levels.FYI scaled to millions of users with just a Google Sheets as a backend. And for reference, they did over $1 million in revenue in the past year. So this is a pretty impressive feat. If you're trying to start a software and sell software, I think this information will be pretty useful because it goes over how even the most simple tech stack can make millions of dollars. So let's get started. I'll link this blog post below, but basically in this blog post, they go over exactly how they scaled it. Just for reference, Levels.FYI is this job aggregator where it tells you how much job salaries are paying. So what Levels.FYI is a aggregator of salaries in the tech industry. So especially if you're interviewing and you're trying to figure out how much money you should negotiate for, you can come to the site and it'll tell you exactly how much money each level is making. So let's say you're interviewing for Facebook and you want to see like how much the senior devs are making. So you can click on it and it'll tell you exactly how much they're making plus the salary, stock, and bonuses. This is essentially what Levels.FYI is, and they have a bunch of data on all types of different companies. So this is the site, and I'm going to go over their entire strategy. This is the founder, and he mentions that they started with just a Google Sheets as the database. If you're technical, this is essentially what their setup is, which is a Google Sheets, and they have a front end called the backend, which is just the Google Sheets. It's a pretty simple architecture where you don't need to manage any other databases. They have a front end UI, and if people wanted to add a salary, what they did is basically you just have a form and you add data to the form and it updates the Google Sheet. After the user updates the Google Sheets, then the front end can now just check the sheet for all the data, and now it's all updated, right? So there's no complicated logic. And you can see that, especially when they started, they stored all of the data on a Google Sheets, but then they would cache it on a S3 file. This is pretty efficient because you don't have to have a Postgres database or any other database. And especially the call from the front end to the Google Sheet is probably a lot longer than from the front end to the cache, which is why this setup is pretty useful. You can read the blog, but basically they used this for a while, and after they had a lot more users, they eventually scaled to using a Postgres database. But they stuck with this Google Sheet architecture for a long time before they moved to the Postgres database. And I think the lesson from this is that you should always just stick with something simple before you scale. Even the founder mentions that premature optimization is a big mistake. So scaling is simple and you should avoid premature optimization. Let me go over a personal experience of how I actually did the same thing. If you guys know about Exploding Insights, what it is like a database of profitable ideas. This is targeted towards people that want to start their own software business or any type of business, and they can come into Exploding Insights to see if that idea is validated and just get inspiration for other ideas as well. So the way that I started was actually with just a Google Sheets as well. I created this Google Sheet and it has a bunch of Fiverr data. So it goes over like the pain point and a bunch of trends. And essentially I launched with just this. So I launched with this Google Sheet and I put it behind a Gumroad page. So Gumroad is this site that allows you to sell products and people can just pay on Gumroad. I only had this Google Sheet and it was like a access after payment type thing. So people would pay, and then after they paid, they would get access to this sheet, right? So that was the first version. And now you can see that months later, I eventually moved to something like an actual web app where people can search for databases, and now there are a bunch of other databases as well. I started with something really simple and I validated the idea just to make sure that people actually wanted the product. Then after enough users, then I moved it to a more advanced setup. So always start simple, and if people like it and pay for it, then you can move to a more featured out setup later. Let me go over how you would replicate this for any idea that you guys have. Essentially, the 3 steps are: first, you find a problem. After you find a problem, create a simple document that solves the problem. Then you sell it. After there is enough users, so let's say 100 users, 1,000 users that actually pay you for your solution, then you should upgrade it to a more complicated web app or whatever. So before anything, you have to find the problem and then you have to create the solution for it, then you sell it, right? So those are the 3 main steps. And I think the first step is the most important because based off the first step, it determines how successful you are in selling it. Because if you find a problem that isn't that painful or people don't really care about it, then it's a lot harder to sell it. Plus, if you find a problem that's really painful and people would pay for it, but you're not sure how you would build it in a timely manner, then that might not be a viable solution as well, because you want to get early momentum. And I found that if you don't get early sales, it's very hard to just give up. So finding the problem is the key step, and I'm going to show you guys how you can do that. So you can do this for free just by going on Fiverr, Upwork, or any places. I have a bunch of other videos teaching guys how to find ideas, but basically in Exploding Insights, what you would do is, let's say you're really interested in the construction niche, right? So you go to the Fiverr database and you just search construction, and this will bring up a bunch of ideas in the construction niche that you can potentially target. You see this, there's a bunch of options up here, but you can scroll down and look at all the records here. So let's say make architectural and construction drawings in AutoCAD. So this specific idea is a problem for people because people want high quality AutoCAD drawings, and AutoCAD is like this program that lets you create houses and whatever. This thing has already made over $600,000 in revenue, so this is pretty good money. Let's just look at another example. A construction article blog post for home improvement DIY. So this is very specific. It's not just writing blog posts, but it's for this specific problem. Right here, do cost estimation material takeoff for all construction trades or MEPs. So this specific problem has made over $4,000 and it's already validated. So instead of building out this really complicated web app that we're not sure if people will actually buy, what we can do is we start with the problem that people want high quality AutoCAD drawings, and we think about how we can make the most simplest product to just test the market if people want this solution. So a simple front end that has a bunch of AutoCAD inspiration, like Levels.FYI, where you have a list of AutoCAD files or inspirations that people can use, especially when they're making drawings. But that's the point where we should just make the first version as simple as possible, and if people like it, then we try to sell it, and then we expand it beyond that. So that's the end of the video, and I will see you guys next time.